Uh, so my name's Joe Tomei, and I teach at a small private university in Japan. Kevin and I are in the same kind of boat. We're at our term break. So consequently, we can take a little step back. We don't have to think about using ChatGPT in the classroom. I notice there's people from all over the world, but my viewpoint's going to be mainly from Japanese students, which is actually a pretty, sad to say, kind of not the highest level group. There was a report on the CIFAR scale, and it said that in 2014, they estimated 75% of third year upper secondary students were at the A1 level in reading and listening, while 85% were at the A1 of writing and speaking. So, and 2017, miraculously, that went up, but I'm not so sure how much that went up or how they did that. But my talk's going to be divided into three sections. I want to do a prologue to get us all on the same page. And then I'm going to talk about some speed bumps, potholes, and dead ends. And then lastly, why it won't matter to some of us. And that's probably more speculative. But let's start with the prologue. Yes, ChatGPT dropped in November of 2022, but it's been floating around for about a year, maybe even 2 years. And I was as shocked, I think, as everyone else when I saw how good it was. But when I looked back, I realized that I'd been dealing with it in a number of different frameworks. My seminar students, I was using it to generate ideas. And here's just a small selection of the kind of writing assistant apps that are out there. And almost all of them are on a freemium model where they give you 3 or 4 chances and then they start asking you for your credit card. And because I didn't want my students to do that, use their credit card, I would hop around to different ones and say, put in your idea for your thesis, get some ideas about what to write. And there were tons of these, and I didn't really think much of it because they're pretty much constrained, but they're all built on top of ChatGPT. Philip mentioned chatbots, and there are a number of chatbots that are also built on ChatGPT. This is Replica. There's sort of a problematic aspect because a lot of it is based on male companionship and thirst, and it's a little icky, but they're floating around out there. So I think that ChatGPT has actually insinuated itself into our lives a lot more than we think. And it's just in November that we kind of were slapped in the face with it. This was another interesting thing. CNET had said they were using AI written articles before. And since most of the writing on the internet is by freelancers, I suspect a lot of them were using ChatGPT to generate a lot of content. And now I have to wonder, well, ChatGPT stopped in 2021, but our future version is going to end up using text that ChatGPT created, creating sort of a snake that's swallowing its own tail. I mean, it's just using the same text and recycling it through. Now, it's not just ChatGPT. There was the Google engineer in July who said that the Google chatbot was sentient, and a lot of people kind of said, oh yeah, what an idiot. But now when we look at ChatGPT, we kind of see, I don't think it's sentient, but I can see how someone could get fooled. And here is, on the side, there are some other models that are floating around, that are getting used, that are getting looked at. It's really interesting because the first one is Google's model, which they said that they don't want to put out there because it might be too dangerous. BERT, which is bidirectional, is actually the one they use for Google searches. The other ones, the last one is sort of the one that I kind of want to focus in just a bit. It's WuDao, which is a Chinese LLM, and it's multimodal. So it's taking in images, possibly voice, I'm not sure. And it has 10 times as many parameters as ChatGPT. Now there's an interesting kind of difference culturally, I think, if you go on YouTube, and all of these links are going to be in a page that I'll share with Paul that he can share, so you can go back and take a look at this stuff. But there's this YouTube video where they announce a student who is enrolled in Tsinghua University, who is actually a construct of Wu Dao. And I can't tell if it's just ironic or if this construct is going to get a diploma, but it basically, the construct is saying, yes, I'm really happy to be researching with this professor. So there is a difference in approach to what AI does in this Asian context versus the Western context. And I'll get back to that at the very end, if I can get through. Last thing in this first section is there was a Google AI researcher named Timit Gebru, who was fired when she wanted to publish a paper. And it was called On the Dangers of Stochastic Parrots. Can Language Models Be Too Big? And her stuff is worth reading, but I want to point you to Emily Bender, who's a linguist at University of Washington. And she's got a lot of good things to say, a lot of good points about how these models work and what they mean for us. So please take a look. She's also got podcasts. And I just want to pull out one quote that she did. The word understanding is heavily loaded. It carries strong connotations of a system that has right systems and causal structures in place. All we know about LLMs is that they are powerful statistical summaries of their training data. So there's going to be a lot of things that a chatbot, a ChatGPT is not going to produce or not going to realize it's producing, because it's just basically copying what its training data is. And of course, this has been a big issue in terms of sexism and racism, but it's also, if you think about it, a big problem in terms of foreign languages, foreign learners learning English. So go to the next section, speed bumps, potholes, and dead ends. I do think ChatGPT is going to be really important, but it's really important to understand how it's working so we can hopefully predict how we're going to face it. The public beta, I assume, is going to close down. They've already made an announcement that they want to do a ChatGPT Pro, where you pay $50 to get pro access. Now, what made ChatGPT so good? Initially, it was ChatGPT 3, and it was producing lots of stuff, but it was pretty much unconstrained. And they added something called Instruct GPT. And this YouTube video is an explanation of Instruct GPT. And basically, the Instruct GPT was, and this may be metaphorical, but was a filter or a cap or kind of a window that controlled what ChatGPT was producing. And when they added this to it, it was good enough. And some of the articles, some of the interviews have said that improvement prompted them to make it an open beta. Now, I'm not sure about that. They may have been doing it to advertise, but there it is. This is from Alan Thompson, and it's kind of an explanation of the model. So basically, they had ChatGPT or GPT-3, which was producing all of these texts in response to prompts, and they added RLHF, real life human feedback. And then when they added that, they were able to put the public beta out. And they've got some other potential applications in the pipeline. One of them is this Web GPT, which could be a Google killer. And what it does is you ask it a question and it produces a paragraph, and then hopefully it will produce links so you can double check. But if you've noticed, Google has kind of declined in value. You start looking for things, and if you choose the wrong word, you might end up with 5 or 6 links on the first page of just sponsored links. You have to go wade through it. So there is clearly something that would be worthwhile that could maybe summarize what the answer is, and then let you go and check it out later. So I think we're going to see these smaller apps coming up. Now, to return to that video, another interesting thing was that Instruct GPT needed the human training data. And there was a report, there's a couple of articles out about how they used Kenyans paid at really low wages, and they had to deal with lots of racist and sexist stuff that actually, had them problematically, causing lots of problems. And I don't want to dwell on that, but it kind of points out that what GPT-3 is producing is basically just like a fire hose. So something is narrowing it down, and apparently it's Instruct GPT. And it also noted that the data is 99% English. So as Philip noted, French and German, I think, some other languages, that doesn't do too badly, but it's doing that off of 1% of the data that's correlated with the English data. This is a really interesting article that underlines this, that ChatGPT is multilingual but monocultural, because it's still producing English speaking values, and as Philip noted, most probably North American English speaking values. So that is problematic as well. This is, if you want to know what's going in, what the ingredients are, this PDF is good because it talks about the different data sets. And if you think about the data sets, you might realize why certain things are coming up. So just to doing okay, I got most of this information from YouTube, and these are 4 channels that the people were early adopters or early kind of cutting edge doing GPT-3. And they've talked about how they make apps and what it does and things like that. So I recommend them. They're not language teachers, but it'll help you get an idea of what ChatGPT is. Now, if you're going to use ChatGPT, I really urge you to look under the hood. And if you go to OpenAI and click on the API link, and then you sign up, and it's free, and they give you $18 of credit to make apps, well, to make the prompts that then could be plugged into apps. Now, maybe I'm not super literate on computers, but you should get in there and look how all this is working, because this is the engine. And to break it down just a little, you can see that GPT-3 has 4 text engines: DaVinci, Babbage, Curie, and Ada. And the DaVinci is the best one, but it takes longer. Curie's more for shorter. Each of these is for more shorter things. So you pay a certain amount for each token, and a token is roughly 4 characters of a normal English text. And then you pay this much for its output. I'm not quite sure how all this works, but this is a playground, so you can start putting prompts in to see what happens. Now, another important thing is the temperature. A lot of people have kind of equated this with creativity. So if it's 0, it will produce the same answer every time. But if it's 1, it will randomize the answers maximally. However, it's not creativity. If you look down, it has show probabilities, which if you turn on, you can see what it's going to come out with. And so, for example, and this is an example that was given by one of the YouTube, is if you put my favorite animal is and blank, if you have the temperature on 0, it will produce the most common answer, which is dog. And as you move that temperature more towards 1, it will go through, and you can see the probabilities of the words that would come up. And it makes you realize that this is nothing but a text completion machine on steroids, which is a really good thing to keep in mind. This is a prompt created by Alan Thompson to create a chatbot named Lida. And then ChatGPT takes these ideas, helpful, cheeky, clever, articulate, wise, and considered intelligence, draws on the wisdom of Dan Millman, Thomas Leonard, Warner Earhart, and the Dalai Lama. And then it's using that to create its personality. And you can see on YouTube some examples of that. You can try and create your own chatbot. And there are places that have these sort of apps. Why teachers need to be careful. I'm going to skip through this video, but basically this is Sam Altman saying he didn't have any idea how OpenAI was going to make any money. And he kind of cheekily said that he was going to ask, when they got it good enough, they were going to ask OpenAI to tell them how to make money. I'm not so sure about that. I have a feeling that they're going to adopt the same kind of strategy that's been adopted in other technology. So the Apple App Store, Google Play, things like that, where they create some sort of repository or something of value, and then they give an API an opportunity to interact with it. And then people are going to take on the risk of making the best API, the best app. And so there'll be this thousand flowers bloom, and you're going to have to look and see what these apps do to see if you want to use them. And then also to see what kind of price point they're going to be at. And I'll skip through that. You've probably just heard that, or you've heard that Microsoft invested $1 billion and then has invested even more. They've just announced that they're going to roll it into Azure. Their talk about getting it into Microsoft Bing, and some people imagine it's going to be in Microsoft Office. But then if it does go in Office runs about $70 to $100 a year now. So you could easily see it, the ChatGPT version of Microsoft Office being $500, $700, which is going to push it out of the range for institutional use. But you might have students paying that so they can produce things. So what I think is really important for me, and again, I'm dealing with Japanese students, is I think that they need to work on voice to text. So they're going to have to, I'm sure that the voice to text apps are going to be keyed onto native speakers. So the students are going to have to be able to understand how to adjust their output to make sure it's understood. Also, I'm going to recommend that students start using chatbots. I'm not really sure. Philip mentioned that people are not, they find themselves bored when they're dealing with artificial intelligence. I'm really wondering if that kind of research was done on the weird group, Western educated, basically college, American college freshmen. And I wonder if Asians, after looking at the video about Wu Dao and seeing how my students interact, I don't think they're going to have as much of a horror of it. And to kind of underline that, well, there's a point that I want to do at the end that I want to underline that, but here at the moment is where ChatGPT falls down. It starts to lose coherence over sufficiently long passages. So I think that's where I will be trying to work with it. Right now, because it's free, I have sort of a 20-minute, 30-minute every day sitting down with ChatGPT and asking it to churn out stuff that I might use when it goes offline. And so I'm collecting things. Basically, I'm mining it now to get all the stuff that I might use in the future. And so here's one thing. My old version, I asked students to write essays about music videos. And so the first paragraph is information about the song and the video, which has some data that then they have to craft into a kind of chart. This song was written by, and that's done in class. Then I ask them to write a discussion of the meaning of the lyrics and introduce the line markers, and then the story of the video and introduce with the line markers, and then give their summary and opinion. And then those drafts are shared among the students, and the students have to cite other students to create their final version. So here is the ChatGPT version. Is they're going to do this first paragraph as voice to text in class, which might be a bit noisy, but we'll work on that. Then they're going to get a ChatGPT written summary and correct it and annotate it with the line markers. And then same with the video and annotate it, and then do the summary and opinion, and then take those texts and ideally create their final version. So hopefully I can avoid them saying, oh, I'll just write this by saying, please write me a 700-word essay about Ariana Grande's Break Free. Okay, I've got one more minute, so I'll really quickly go through this. In AI, there is a question of alignment, which is, does the goal of the program match the goal of the human? And the canonical explanation of that is the paperclip problem. And it says, imagine a paperclip factory that's given autonomy, and then it can do whatever it needs to do, and it's been told it needs to make paperclips. If it becomes sufficiently powerful enough, it takes all the resources, so everything is paperclips. Now, there's been a lot of argument about this, and if you go to this alignment forum, there's some really interesting discussion. But I realized that this is the same problem that we often face in our classes. And this quote I really liked was, ChatGPT will be brutal in classrooms where writing is assigned rather than taught. Our problem with alignment is that our student goals may not be aligned with the teacher goals. And many of our students are more interested in receiving a certificate, a license, or a credit than actually learning to produce the language. And many of those student goals are incorporated in the system and are also incorporated in the culture. And I'm having to wonder if the students are going to, a lot of my challenge has been to try to convince them that learning English in order to be better at English is important. And so what ChatGPT has become is sort of like a universal solvent to say, wait a minute, these aren't aligned. So last thing, and I'm finished, and then we can have chat. I kind of feel this is true because all of the discussion I've seen about ChatGPT in Japan has been primarily translated articles, translated from English to Japanese. And I've been looking, I'm the head of the eCampus Center, and there's been no meetings or discussions or any kind of the panic that I see in the States. And this is like the only thing I've seen. And this was from the Asahi Shimbun, and my translation is kind of ma-ma, but it's a very sort of, gee, kids, what are you going to do about them? There is no moral panic here. And I don't think that we're going to have the moral panic here. So we might have to be working at odds with our administrators, with our colleagues, to try and make sure that we're getting them to appreciate the language. So I'm over, but thank you so much. Thanks to Paul for organizing this, and Philip and Kevin as well. Really interesting thoughts. And that's it. Thanks.